All right. Shalom, everyone. I had some technical difficulties, which should not be very unusual with me. Okay. I don't know if this one was me or if it was the computer or the topic or what it was, but nevertheless, we're here. Okay. Tonight, before we get started, I have some prayer requests. First, I've got a family, and I'm not going to mention their name, but they've asked for special prayer for their children, their married children, and also a sister-in-law and her mother. Okay, so if you'll remember that. Now, we got many of you got an email from Rabbi Avraham Greenbaum that he's going to have one of his kidneys removed. So please be praying for him. He is a tremendous, he's a tzaddik, okay? And we need to lift him up in prayer, okay? I'm going to get more details on it. I'll be bringing you up to date on that as I can. Please be praying for Grayson Jeffords. And I have not talked to him in the last few days. The last I talked to him, he was doing better. And he had severe kidney infections and had to be hospitalized for a period of time. He was back home, and but please be holding him up in prayer. Also, the last week, my wife Debbie has been sick, just literally in bed sick for a whole week. We took her to the emergency room yesterday, and she has a small intestine. It's inflamed. Okay, and so they're going to send her to a specialist, but please be praying for her. She's been very, very uncomfortable. And if you're praying the Amidah, her mother of blessed memory, her name was Margaret. Okay, all right. And due to Debbie's illness and Debbie being sick, and us spending a lot of time in the hospital yesterday, as well as the days before, I did not have the opportunity to put together a PowerPoint for tonight. Now, in reality, as I began to look at it, I decided to not do a PowerPoint. I have another way that I want to present it, which I think is much better than a PowerPoint. I want to show a book. And this book, I'm going to show you in more detail. You can see the size of the book. Now, this is printed on one page per sheet, one page of the book per sheet. It's 157 pages long. The name of the book is called The Ketoret, a source-based historical account of the Qumran Incense Discovery. It's a project of the Qumran Project. This was done by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. Now, he is a friend of mine. He is a tremendous writer, and I would say that he has done an outstanding job on presenting the material in this book. Now, what we'll be talking about has to deal with a discovery that was made back in the early 1990s. And I happen to be on the fringes of that discovery. So I can relate to the time and some of the people that were involved, the events that as I knew them then, and then this book just opened my eyes to so much more. Before we get into the book, what I'm going to do is I have gone through, I've read the book, certain parts of it more than once. By the way, in your chat, should be a link, as well as if you don't have the link there, it is on the little advertisement that I put up on Facebook, and should also be on YouTube. There is a link to download the book. It is a free download. Their objective is to get the information out. It is not a money-making project or anything along those lines. Now, before we get to talking about the book, I'd like to mention that number one, it is very difficult to write an academic paper, or a paper that is well received in the academic world. It requires that you have certain guidelines that you follow, that you do a number of things. And I know, because I've been working on an academic paper, and it's quite challenging. Now, it gets more challenging whenever you are also working with an audience that is Orthodox Jewish, as well as non-Jewish, as well as Christian, as well as any number of different things, and being able to effectively communicate to all these various groups. So the archaeologists, the chemists, the rabbi, the Christian pastor, or the just curious own seeker, trying to communicate a very important message, and in a very personal way that can reach everyone on their level where they are, to understand the importance and to go forward with it. Now, I want to read a passage which begins to give you an idea. We're talking about, again, it's called the Ketoret, the temple incense. It's not just incense like you would go to Walmart and buy a package of incense and burn in your house. It is a special blend of incense. And so I want to share my screen and go to the book of Shemot, chapter 30. This is in the Parshat. Let me see if I can find it here. Kitisa. And all right, yeah. No. All right, I'm going to have to reload this. This is it stems from the difficulties we were having before. Okay, so give me a second. And we'll be right to it. Now we're going. Okay, so this is the Art Scroll Stone Tanakh. I originally was going to show you the uh, the Qumran, the Qumran Tanakh. I prefer the Qumran over the Art Scroll, but in there they use the word perfume rather than the word incense, and I preferred the word incense. That's what we're dealing with. And so here we're going to go to chapter 30, this last paragraph. You'll see it says incense in the margin. And Hashem said to Moshe, take yourself spices, stacte, onycha, and galbanum, spices, and pure frankincense. These shall be of equal weight. You shall make it into incense, a spice compound, the handiwork of a perfumer, thoroughly mixed, pure and holy. You shall grind some of it freely and place some of it before the testimonial tablets in the tent of meeting, where I shall designate a time to meet you. It shall remain holy of holies to you. Okay, so that is the highest level of Kedusha. The incense that you shall make in its proportion, you shall not make for yourselves. It shall remain holy to you for Hashem. Whoever makes it like its like to smell it shall be cut off from his people. The sin of Ketoret, okay, the sentence of Ketoret, to be basically excommunicated. And there are many, many other things that are going to deal with this. We'll talk about it as we go into the book. Now, let me move this out of the way. And again, I'm going to show the book. I would really encourage you to download the book. And as I said, it is free. Now, if you download the book and you want to share it with someone, do send them the link, okay? The link. Don't send them a copy of the book, okay? That you're violating their provisions, but send them the link and encourage them to download it and read it. It has hills and valleys, okay, in the first part of the book. It is where they're telling this story. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and we're going to bring up another document, and we'll use this as we go through. And here we go. All right, you should be seeing notes on the Ketoret. This is my notes on the Ketoret. And basically, what I've done, and I'm going to stop for a moment, what I've done is I've taken the excerpts from the book. By the way, I was supposed to have done an interview yesterday with Eliyahu Berkowitz, and Victor Schultz was also going to be in that. And but due to us having to take Debbie to the hospital, I had to postpone it. And I spoke to him late at night on Sunday evening, and we're going to try to do the interview tomorrow morning. Okay, and so that will become available either on our YouTube. I'm sure Victor will have it, Eliyahu will have it, and I expect that it'll be somewhere 30, 40 minutes. It will not be in detail. What we're looking at tonight is going to be not as detailed as I would like it, but it'll have quite a bit of detail. So I took, with their permission, they allow me to take excerpts, and so I put them into a document so that we could somewhat go through. I want to show you how I did this real quick, just so that you can kind of track with how this is going. Okay, so here's the book, and I'm going to start just turning some pages. But you'll notice that you'll notice right away, one more page, I think, two more pages. Okay. And so let me go back. Okay, so here I have descriptions of the Talmud and the Midrash, and you see I put a little tab to the side. Okay, and so uh, for some reason, this particular paragraph I liked and I included it. Okay, and so as we go through, I marked the whole book like this. And so these paragraphs I have extracted and put into one document. We'll go through it, and as we go, we'll talk about it. It's going to tell the story of a man named Vendell Jones. I knew Vendell. He passed away in 2010, but I knew Vendell back years ago, and I didn't know him well. We were acquaintances. We were actually in a conference, both of us speaking, and we spoke a while in the lobby, and uh, you know, that was about the extent of it. I knew that about his find of what was thought to be temple incense. Now, I knew this from an experience that I had back in 1993. In 1993, I had gone to Jerusalem for a week, actually about a week and a half, to study with Rabbi Chaim Richman. He had invited me to come and study. And I went up to his office, which was like a shoebox office. It was really very little. I had a plywood desk that wasn't even a full, not even a third of a sheet of plywood, and probably only about 4 or 5 feet long at the most. And uh, he had his computer there, he had a chair, and there was enough room for me to have a chair. And I came in, and he was on the phone. Um, he was talking on his cell phone, and um, there was a bag right in front of him. It was a like a Ziploc bag, and it was full of a reddish brown substance. And so I waited until he got off the phone, and uh, I asked him, who were you talking with? And he said, he held up the bag and he said, uh, this was found down at Qumran, and it is possible that it is temple incense. And he said, I was just speaking with one of the chemists that are doing the analysis of it. Okay, so this book is going to go into that story. It's going to go into the story of Vendel. It's going to go into the story of his team, a little bit about Qumran. And as you know, Qumran was not only the place that they found numbers of scrolls, but they had found several different items that were linked directly to the temple. And the incense, if that's what it is, was found in a cave that was discovered by Vendel's team. This cave was mentioned in a scroll that was found at the Dead Sea that is called the Copper Scroll. And within the Copper Scroll, and it's called that reason because it is done on a sheet of copper and it was rolled and so forth. And it tells of temple treasures that have been put in hiding at various places. In particular, it is believed that they were put in hiding in the surrounding mountains and hills at Qumran. Okay, so the book goes into the story and how they discovered this particular cave, and so uh, it tells us, what made them think that this was Ketoret and the story that went from there. And so it's a fascinating story, but I hope I do it justice. I do hope you'll read the book. It will be much better than what I say on it, but I hope that I can offer some things that will help. Okay, so I want to go into my document that I prepared, and we're going to just move from there. And so the essential background of Ketoret, Qumran, and Vendel Jones, that is at the start of the chapter. This is part one, what it calls. Now, it's going to refer to Ketoret 6a, and Ketoret 6a is going to be from the Babylonian Talmud, okay, the Talmud Bavli. And so I took just a small part of it. It says the sages taught in a Breita. Okay, so a Breita is going to be a halakha that was not included in the Mishnah. Okay, so the sages taught in a Breita. How is the blending of the incense performed? Balm and onycha and galbanum and frankincense, each of these by weight of 70 minae, in other words, 70 units of 100 dinars. Myrrh and cassia, spikenard, and saffron, each of these by weight of 16 minae. Costus by weight of 12 minae, 3 minae of aromatic bark, and 9 minae of cinnamon. Kersanah of the volume of 9 cob. Cypress wine of the volume of 3 seah, and 3 more cob, a half seah. If one does not have cypress wine, he brings old white wine. Sodomite salt is brought by the volume of a quarter cob. Lastly, a minimum amount of the smoke razor, a plant that causes the smoke of the incense to rise properly. Rabbi Natan says also a minimal amount of Jordan amber. Okay, so let's see. All right. So let's stop sharing for a moment. This is the basic information. And by the way, in the Siddur, as we read the Siddur, every morning there is a section that deals with the temple offerings. Okay. And then you have a special place that deals with the incense. And it goes into the command that the incense be burned. And then it goes into another page that is actually what we just read. Now, if you read that, you're coming away with, I don't really understand what I just read, okay? But I can break it down for you. It gives you that there are a number of ingredients. In fact, there are 11 ingredients, I believe. And some of these are going to be various spices. Some are going to be made not from the flowers necessarily. Some would be, but some from the bark and so forth. But you have these 11 ingredients, but then you have to add 2 other ingredients. They're not part of the mixture of the incense. This is the mixture of the incense, but to finish it off, you have to add sodom salt and corsina lye. Okay, and so these 2 make a total of 13. And so these ingredients, the incense, is what you read on the Manet and the Kav, these are different measurements. Okay, and so, but there's a specific formula. Now, what we read at the first is that you can't replicate this formula. It's against the Torah. It's against what God said because it's most holy. And so it says in the passage that we read out of Shemot chapter 30, that if one were to make it for their own use, even to smell it for their own use, I mean, to make it so they could smell, then you would be literally put out of the people of Israel. Okay, and there are more serious things. If you stop to think, Nadab and Abihu, when it says they burned strange fire, what was it? They were burning incense, but they exceeded the boundaries. This is the sons of the high priest Aaron, and they were slain. Okay, and so we have that Korah in his rebellion. They're burning incense, and they're slain. There were 250 of them. Later on, we have the king Uriah, who goes in, puts on priestly garments, in fact, high priestly garments, goes in and he burns incense within the temple with the golden altar, the altar of incense, and he's struck with sarat, okay, biblical leprosy. He becomes a mitzorah. And so, if we follow the account of Josephus, this is where an earthquake shook, and it appears that the veil of the temple tore at that time, which allowed the Kohanim who came in to confront him, allows them to see that he has biblical leprosy, Sarah. And so it is not something that you play with. It is something that is very serious, straight from the scriptures that we read in the Tanakh. Okay, and so the that will be worked into this thing. Now, I did not put much in here in the papers that I drew up on the history of Vendel Jones. Vendel was originally a Baptist pastor, and but he, in his reading of the scripture, he began to ask questions, and he went to a rabbi to help him with some of the questions, and he ended up leaving the church, and he became what was called B'nai Noach. In fact, Vendel would eventually become one of the key players worldwide in the Noachide movement. He went to Israel in 1967 with his family. And just as he got there, the Six-Day War broke out, and he volunteered to help. Now, understand, he has not gone through a conversion. He's not Jewish, but he volunteered to help. And he had a unique aspect about him, is that he was colorblind. And so while everybody might see a brown or a green or a yellow, he would see other colors. So a man wearing camouflage clothing would be in different colors to him, and it would not blend with the natural greenery that is used to hide him. And so he was a spotter. And so he became very famous in Israel. The news carried stories about him, and he actually, due to the heavy firing and the howitzers, the tanks, and so forth, it permanently damaged his hearing, and he had a hearing problem for the rest of his life. Now, he had studied in archaeology and had actually some very credible doctors in archaeology that he worked under, and he got before the war. He was there long enough. He got a dig permit from the Jordanian government to dig at Qumran, and he had become interested in the copper scroll, okay, and the treasures that were there, and so. I'm not going to, as I said, deal much with the history of Vendel, but with the Six-Day War, the Dead Sea region around Qumran, it became under Israeli control. And so there was a law that if you had already a digging permit from the Jordanians, that the Israelis would honor it. And so he was allowed to continue the dig. Okay. And so he was looking for this particular cave called the Cave of the Columns, and he was looking for a northern entrance into it that no one had discovered. And it turns out that he put together a team, and they were digging. He had an archaeologist that was assigned to him from the Israel Antiquities Authority. And the archaeologist was not so much on site as he would sign the various permits, various permissions, and so forth. There were archaeologists that were at times in this story that were there supervising some of the dig, but for the most part, it was Vendel and his team. They had finished a season of looking for this northern entrance. They knew where the Cave of the Columns was, but his wife of that time, later they divorced, and he remarried. But his wife at that time, she was somewhat of an expert in ancient languages and in Hebrew and so forth and reading. And the Copper Scrolls, she read differently than others. And she said, I'm convinced that there is a northern opening to this cave. And so they looked for it and looked for it and couldn't find it. And so the team basically have reached their last day. They go home, and there's a crew of about four that remain. And one of the guys that remain is a guy named Dale Griffin. And so I know Dale. He worked for me for about a year and a half. And Dale was up there with these other three guys, and he stumbled, went sliding down the mountain, went off the edge, and he landed on a ledge. Okay. It wasn't a four drop. I mean, we're not talking about dropping 200 feet. He lands on a ledge and he looks up and he can see an opening indicating there's a cave there. Now, all that's showing that he can see, and when they get down there, they can see that the cave is much, much bigger than the hole that is showing. It has been filled up. Okay. And so the big news. Okay. This was in 1992. And so I believe they started in February. And so in April, they were about 3 weeks into it, and they discover they're having to move a massive amount of dirt, and they discover that there is a trough in the ground, and the trough was actually made to hold something, and it was covered up, and so it was covered up. It was disguised, and you could actually what keyed them off is that they could tell that it was using stones that were placed there. And so the big question is what's underneath it. So they take it off and they realize that they dismantle this cover, and there is this reddish brown matter that's down in this trough, quite a bit of it, about 600 pounds of it. And they thought, well, it's dirt. And but they began to ask some questions like, why are they hiding it? And so one of the workers, a young woman, she said it has an odor. There's a smell about it. And so I'm going to pick up, and I want to go back to sharing. And let's see. All right. I want to make sure that I got you the right picture. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to move down just a little bit. I want to read just a little bit more out of Ketoret. It says, if one placed honey in the incense is disqualified it, as it is stated, for you shall make no leaven, nor any honey. Smoke is an offering made by fire unto the Lord, Leviticus 2:11. If he omitted any one of its spices, he is liable to receive death at the hand of heaven. Okay, so you don't want to make a mistake. Rabbi Shimon says the balm mentioned here is nothing other than a resin excluded from the balsam tree, nor the bark of the tree itself. The carcinoline mentioned is not part of the ingredients of the incense itself. That's important. But it is necessary as one rubs the onycha in it so that the onycha should be pleasant. Likewise, the cypress wine is required as one soaks the onycha in it so that it should be strong. And urine is good for this purpose, but one does not bring urine into the temple because it is inappropriate. The Gemara comments, the final ruling supports the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Hananiah, who says with regard to a verse that discusses the incense, it is sacred. It shall be sacred to you. and it references you to the passages we read, that this teaches that all its actions should be performed only in the sacred area of the temple. Okay, that's going to become very important as we go through. All right, so now, so this is from page 12 of the Ketoret book, the one that was put out. Okay, so there's an editorial note, and it says descriptions in the Talmud and Midrash. A broad range of Jewish sources relate to the incense. The Mishnah is the foundational compilation of Jewish oral law, redacted by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, about around 200 common era. The Talmud is the vast rabbinic elaboration of the Mishnah, preserved in two main versions: the Jerusalem Talmud, compiled primarily in the land of Israel around the 4th century Common Era, and the Babylonian Talmud, completed in Babylonia around the 5th to 6th centuries Common Era. The Tosafta is a companion collection of rabbinic teachings from the Mishnaic period related to and often supplementing the Mishnah, though not included in it. Midrash refers to rabbinic biblical interpretation, ranging from legal analysis to narrative exposition, compiled and transmitted across several centuries. The Zohar is the central text of Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, traditionally attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and first widely circulated in 13th century Spain. The Agadah is the narrative and homiletical portions of rabbinic literature as distinct from legal material. Now, I want to include that note because it's given you the range of reference material that it's going to direct you to. Okay, so we're going to go to page 12 and 13. The Mishnah in Tractate Tamid, chapter 5, Mishnah 4 through chapter 6, Mishnah 3, provides a vivid procedural account of the morning incense service. After the altar of burnt offerings had been prepared, one of the priests was selected by lottery to bring the Ketoret into the sanctuary. He entered the Hekal, that's the temple building. That's the temple building with the menorah, the table of the bread of the face, and the incense altar. Another holy the main sanctuary, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, which housed the incense altar and other holy vessels, carrying a specially designed ladle called a kaf, filled with the powdered incense. He was accompanied partway by two other priests bearing the censer of burning coals, then left alone at the altar. The moment of the incense offering, when the priest poured the Ketoret onto the coals and withdrew, was the signal for the entire assembly in the temple courtyard to prostrate itself in prayer. It was, the Mishnah implies, the spiritual apex of the daily service. The priest who won the lottery to burn the incense would take the spoon used for carrying the incense, and the spoon was similar to a large gold vessel that held 3 kav. Okay, the kav is going to be a dry measure. And the smaller vessel was placed inside the spoon. The vessel was filled to overflow with incense and had a cover to prevent spillage of the incense, and there was a type of cloth placed upon it from above to preserve the fragrance of the incense. The priest who won the right to bring the coal pan with the coals from the outer altar to the incense altar in the sanctuary took the silver coal pan, ascended to the top of the outer altar, cleared the extinguished coals from the perimeter of the flame to here and to there. Then he shoveled 4 kav, again, that's a dry measure, from the consumed inner coals, which were burned in the depths of the flame, into the coal pan. He descended from the altar and emptied the coals into the coal pan made of gold. Okay, so he gets it in silver. Now he's going to put it into gold because he's going into the temple where everything's gold. Approximately 1 kav of coals from it was spilled and scattered on the courtyard floor, as the capacity of the gold pan was only 3 kav. And a priest would sweep the scattered coals into the temple courtyard drain that passed through the courtyard to drain the waste outside the temple. That's called the Amma, because it means a cubit. It's a cubit wide, a cubit deep. And on Shabbat, when it is prohibited to extinguish fire, the priest would not sweep the coals into the canal. Rather, he would overturn a pesachter upon them. Okay, so it's going to be, he puts a pan over it. One chain with which a priest would pull the vessel filled with ashes down the ram, and the ashes would not spill. And the pesachter would serve three purposes. Now we're going to skip that part and go down to the bottom. The priest with the spoonful of incense, the priest with the gold coal pan filled with coals, reached the place between the entrance hall. That's called the porch. Okay? So give me a second. All right. We'll stop sharing for a moment. All right. So I want to show you where everything is. And here is where he gets the coals from, right here. Okay, that fireplace. And so he's going to come down the ramp, and he's between the porch and the altar. And so he's going to go in from there. Okay. And so this is a highlight of the service. Okay. I'm going to go back to the article real quick. And okay. Between the entrance hall and the outer altar, no person could hear the voice of another speaking to him in Jerusalem due to the sound generated by the shovel. And actually, what it's talking about is what's called the magraphah. It's a musical instrument. And that sound would serve three purposes. Any priest who hears its sound knows that his brethren, the priests, are entering to prostrate themselves. In the sanctuary at that time, he would run and come to prostrate himself with them. Any Levite who hears it should know that his brethren, the Levites, are entering the courtyard to stand on the platform to recite the psalm accompanying the libation. So that's the priestly choir. And he would run and come to sing with them. And the head of the non-priestly watch, that's the Ma'amad, okay, the standing men, which stands in the courtyard as the agents of the Jewish people, will position the richly impure priests and singers at the eastern gate of the courtyard to make it clear that those priests who were not performing the temple service due to their ritual impurity, the priest with the pan full of incense, the priest with the gold coal pan filled with coals, began ascending the 12 steps of the entrance hall. The priest who won the right of the removal of ash from the inner altar and the removal of ash from the menorah would precede them to remove the vessels that remained in the sanctuary. The priest who won the right of the removal of ash from the inner altar entered the sanctuary and took the basket that he had left there after removing the ashes from the altar. And when he completed his task, he prostrated himself with his hands and feet spread and emerged from the sanctuary. The priest won the right of the removal of ash from the menorah, entered the sanctuary, and found the two western lamps, in other words, the easternmost and the westernmost, and it goes on. This all deals with them servicing the menorah, okay? The priest who won the right to bring the coal pan filled with coals to the inner altar from the burning of the incense first piled the coals on the inner altar and then flattened them, distributing them evenly on the altar with the bottom of the coal pan. And when he finished distributing the coals, he prostrated himself and emerged from the sanctuary. The priest who won the right to burn the incense would take the smaller vessel containing the incense from within the spoon and would give it to the priest who was a friend or his relative, whom he designated to assist him, and enter the sanctuary with him. If the incense was scattered from the smaller vessel into the spoon, The priest accompanying him would give the incense to the priest burning the incense in his handfuls. And the experienced priest would teach the priest burning the incense, be careful, because if you're not careful, you might begin scattering the incense on the side of the altar that is before you. Rather, start scattering on the far side of the altar so that you'll not be burned by the burning incense when you're scattering it. So it goes through the details here. Now, I want to come to the priest burning the incense would not burn it until the appointed priest would say to him, burn the incense. And if it was the high priest who's burning the incense, the appointed priest would say to him, deferentially, my master, the high priest, burn the incense. All right. So he's going to exit. Therefore, the people, in other words, the priest left that area. And the priest burned the incense on the inner altar and prostrated himself and emerged from the sanctuary. Okay. So I want to go down. Now that I put in there, that's one of the things is there's all kinds of links that you can go to these texts and read them. And I encourage you to do that because the incense service is almost unknown by most non-Jews. And its significance is beyond your wildest imagination, which will come out as we go through these documents. Okay. So we're on page 14 now. All right. So the title here in the book, God's Formula, nothing added, nothing removed. The Midrash also preserves the tradition echoed in the Talmud that the fragrance of the Ketoret could be detected far beyond the temple precincts. Yoma 39b records that the fragrance of the incense could be detected as far away as Jericho, some 25 kilometers, and that the fragrance was so pervasive that no bride in Jerusalem needed to wear perfume. Whether understood literally or as an amplified expression of the Ketoret's extraordinary power, this tradition reflects the central role of the Ketoret in the sensory and spiritual landscape of the ancient city. Okay, so this is a midrash, and midrash is not always accurate. Sometimes it gives elaborate language to describe something so that you can somewhat get a glimpse of it. Okay, and sometimes it's a legend. Okay, it's a legend, and it will give extraordinary terms and so forth. Now, when I read this before, I mean, some midrash is very specific. And so when I read this before, about what we have here, Yoma 39b records that the fragrance of the incense could be detected as far away as Jericho. Jericho's a long way, 25 kilometers. It's quite a distance, it's 18 miles maybe. And that the fragrance was so pervasive that no bride in Jerusalem needed to wear perfume. And I always thought that's just, everything's being amplified. But as I read this book, I came to realize very definitely that the burning of the incense could be smelled at least all over the Temple Mount. Now, the Temple Mount is 35 acres. And that anyone that was in the near vicinity, when they left, it would be in their clothes. And it would just burn it one time, and one day, and the aroma would last for days. And so I began to look at the Midrash in a new way. I began to start to see it's not such an exaggeration. Maybe it doesn't go all the way to Jericho, 18 miles away, but nevertheless, we're not talking about a normal incense. We're talking about a supernatural substance, a supernatural thing. And what we see as it develops out, it's going to be amazing. Okay, so, all right. this last sentence, whether understood literally or as an amplified expression of the Ketoret's extraordinary power, this tradition reflects the central role of the Ketoret in the sensory and spiritual landscape of the ancient city. All right, so we're going to page 16. And it starts off Qumran, archaeological significance, and the Jerusalem temple connection. These are the titles inside the book. Okay, that's going to be, so on page 17 and 18, it says the inhabitants and the relationship to the temple. The majority scholarly view identifies the Qumran community with the Essenes, described by Pliny, by Josephus, and Philo as a disciplined Jewish sect living near the Dead Sea. Now, that's also very controversial, okay? And more, I'm not so sure that it's Essenes as a priestly group that was there. And some might say that they were rejecting the temple in Jerusalem, but possibly it could be something different that I hope to get to be able to share with you. Other scholars, including Lawrence Schiffman. Now, Lawrence Schiffman is an Orthodox Jew. He's a professor, I believe, at Hebrew University, and he's written 2 books on the Temple Scroll. He's a very, very knowledgeable on Qumran, on the Essenes, on the various groups and the various possibilities, okay? So Lawrence Schiffman, having emphasized the community's Zadokite and priestly orientation, okay? So we have that idea of a priestly group there rather than maybe an Essene group. Whatever the precise label, the scrolls reveal a community intensely, I want to amplify that, intensely concerned with the Jerusalem temple, its calendar, its purity laws, and its future restoration. The community role scroll describes the community's assembly as a holy house for Israel and the foundation of the Holy of Holies for Aaron. This language suggests that the group did not merely remember the temple from afar, it understood itself as preserving temple holiness in exile, maintaining sacred standards outside Jerusalem until a future restoration. And I have another theory I hope to get to. Several scrolls make the temple connection explicit. The temple scroll. I've worked extensively in the temple scroll. Igaya Dean, Lawrence Schiffman have all published major works on it. Much of it's linked to the design, construction, and operation of the Jerusalem temple. The MMT scroll records disputes over purity rules and sacrificial procedures. The War Scroll imagines a final conflict leading to a purified temple under priestly and messianic leadership. The Copper Scroll, okay, here we are. Engraved on copper rather than parchment, lists 64 hiding places for immense quantities of gold, silver, and consecrated objects. Described in temple terms. Now, Vendel, everybody that knew Vendel, knew anything about Vendel, knew that he was searching for the items in the temple scroll, in the copper scroll. Several individuals have dedicated their lives to them. Now, tonight, I'm just going to talk about Vendel and the discoveries that they made. For Vendel Jones and those who followed him, this scroll became a guide to the possibility that sacred temple material had been hidden in the Qumran region before the Roman destruction. Professor Rachel Ellar's reinterpretation, the B'nai Zadok priesthood, that is a subtitle. Among the most important alternative readings of Qumran is the interpretation by Professor Rachel Ellar, I'm probably mispronouncing her name, the head of the Department of Jewish Thought at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. In her book, The Three Temples, on the Emergence of Jewish Mysticism, she argues that the scrolls were not produced by a voluntary Essene sect, but by the B'nai Zadok. Okay, the sons of Zadok. Okay, now Zadok is the Zadokite priesthood. They were the ones that served in the temple. Okay, and so not just the Ezekiel temple where they're mentioned by that name, but also in the first temple and second temple. Okay, so this displays hereditary priesthood whose authority in Jerusalem had been overturned in the Hasmonean period, commemorated by the Hanukkah holiday. Now, there is a truth there, and that was also extended to Herod. Okay, and in her reading, the scrolls preserve the archive of priestly establishment in exile, maintaining its sacred traditions while awaiting restoration. I want to see, yeah. Okay. Elor's interpretation is especially important for the source book because it places Qumran inside a broader temple universe, drawing on the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jubilees, Enoch, in Enochic literature, the songs of the Sabbath, sacrifice, and related texts. She reconstructs priestly worldview in which the Garden of Eden, the Holy of Holies, and the celestial temple are interconnected expressions of one sacred reality. The earthly temple service was therefore not an isolated ritual, but the terrestrial counterpart of a heavenly order. All right. We're going to stop here. We're going to go to break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. And this is the part that we start getting into it. The whole first part was just kind of laying down what is the temple incense? What is the temple service? I wanted to elevate us up beyond something just a routine service that might have meant something to some people, but to many people it didn't have any meaning. What I'm trying to illustrate is the temple incense service was the actual pinnacle of the daily service. It is this magnificent thing. And I did not even realize, I've been studying the temple for 40 years now, and I did not realize the magnitude of the Ketoret service and the impact that it would have on every individual that witnessed it. Okay. And so I'm hoping that you'll start seeing as we go forward. And just bear with me. We've got to lay down the foundation, but as we get into it, and I hope every one of you will go and read this book and read the story, the exciting story of the discovery of the incense. Okay. We're going to go to break. We'll be back in just about 10 minutes, thereabouts.
nombre es Gabriel Gallegos. Saludos a todos aquellos seguidores de Hacktivac Ministries, en especial a nuestra comunidad latina. El día de hoy queremos compartir con ustedes uno de los artículos más impresionantes que podemos tener en nuestra tienda virtual. Te invitamos a que te quedes y a conocer más del modelo tridimensional del templo. Les presento el nuevo modelo del templo. Una de las cosas adicionales que se han agregado en esta impresión es esta base donde está de una manera inclinada de 45 grados. ¿Para qué? Para que pueda enseñarse mejor a nuestra audiencia. O si usted, al igual que a mí, le gusta ponerlo de la manera tradicional y ponerlo en una superficie plana, pues también puedo hacerlo. De esta manera usted lo puede poner en su oficina o en su lugar de estudio o en su lugar de reunión. ¿Para qué? Para que la gente pueda admirar la gran maravilla de lo que se ha podido llegar a hacer. Ahora les voy a invitar a que me sigan acompañando para mirar las siguientes adiciones que se le han agregado a este nuevo modelo. Uno de los nuevos aspectos de este nuevo modelo tridimensional son los colores que se han añadido, como el color oro, el color blanco, un café y un café un poquito más claro. Podemos mirar el color blanco en los 15 escalones que están en el atrio de las mujeres, como también en las 4 lámparas. Podemos mirar el color blanco en el misbeach, en el altar, como también en los 2 escalones que están entre el ulam y el altar. Podemos encontrar este color blanco también en estos pequeños mikvaot o también baños de inmersión que se han añadido. También podemos apreciar en el misbeach, el altar, se agregaron a color las 3 fogatas y en el centro podemos encontrar de color café más claro las cenizas del altar. Otro de los buenos beneficios de este modelo es de que los edificios adicionales, el techo puede ser removido. En el edificio sureste podemos mirar cómo el área donde el Sanedrín se reunía para hacer sus juicios, y también se ha agregado un color azul en donde está el lavacro para así poder distinguir las diferentes áreas. Les agradecemos mucho a cada uno de ustedes, especialmente a la comunidad latina, por estarnos acompañando. Pueden ir a Jerusalem Temple Studies y buscar la opción tienda o store en inglés y luego buscar modelos del templo y ahí podrán obtener el suyo. Bendiciones y gracias por su apoyo. Shalom.
I don't know what that is. Okay. Gabriel?
No audio.
Okay, should have it now. Let me double check. Yeah. Okay. All right. What I was saying is, first off, I made the mistake of not hitting where the thing would loop and keep playing. Secondly, I didn't turn the microphone on when I came back, and part of my problem is I have so much material to communicate. Several things before we start. Number one, we are at 699 subscribers on YouTube. Tonight, we want to go over 700. Our goal is to get up to 1,000. I do hope that you'll have questions. And I'm leaving out a lot of the story, but I'm hoping that you'll download the link. And the link should work. They've tested it to make sure it's working. Some people are saying they're having problems. Download it again, or try different. See if you can get it. It should work for you. If you enjoy what you're hearing, hit the like button. That helps us. Follow us, share it, and subscribe. Okay, those are the things. If you're on Facebook and you're enjoying it, share it. Go to YouTube and share it. That will help us. Okay, but bring your comments, bring your questions. We're gonna go through them at the end. Okay. Now I want to go back to the story before we get back to the text in the book. How did they begin to have suspicion that this was something special? Well, number one, that the brown material. One of the girls, she took and she tasted it. Okay. And so if it would be dirt, it would just be, it wouldn't dissolve. But if it was organic, it would dissolve. Now you have to think this has been hidden for 2,000 years. And so you would think that whatever it was, it might have lost all of that organic substance, but it didn't. It dissolved in the mouth, and they realized this is organic. Number two is, I already told you that inside the cave, they found that not only was there a trough, but that trough was hidden, that they had built a wall around it in a special way with part cut stones, part natural stones, and they had disguised it. So it was like something really valuable is underneath. Number three, and I didn't mention this, I told you that the cave was filled all the way almost to the top at the entrance. Well, part of that was from the natural erosion. They had landslides when they'd have earthquakes and things, but they realized that they had disguised the entrance to the cave. Like, we don't want someone to come in and just find this. And so all these little things begin to raise questions. What on earth is this? And so they sent it off for testing. And so we're going to go through that testing of what started to come out. And the suspicion, could this be the biblical Ketoret that was burned in the Holy Temple? That's going to bring up other questions. Wait a minute. According to the scripture and according to the writings, that if you mishandle it, it could bring totally disastrous results. And so that brought up other questions. There's another part to the story that I didn't tell earlier. Vendell Jones in the same cave have found a flask or a bottle, and there was some type of oil within it, and it was suspected of being an anointing oil that was used in the temple. Okay. But there was a bad experience because he filled out all the forms. He got all the archaeological approvals, and the item was collected and it went to the museum, and that was the end of it. Okay, they didn't have access to it. They could not explore to actually see if this would be the biblical anointing oil. So all these things are in the back of their mind. Okay. And so we're going to go back to the text. And I think that this is going to develop. It has not only is it a story of possibly, if it is the biblical Ketoret, I mean, this is major. The two hardest things to get for the temple are the red heifer and the incense. Okay, because the incense has a secret formula. And the family that made the incense for the temple, called the Avtinas family, they refused to give it. And in fact, at first the sages were furious that they would not share the formula, but they had a fear that it would be used for pagan worship. And so they came to respect it. They actually tried to get incense makers from Egypt and so forth to make the incense for the Holy Temple. And they could not get it to do what it was supposed to do, where the smoke goes straight up, goes to the top, fills, and then comes back down into the room. Okay, so there's a lot of factors that are at stake here. Okay, we're going to go back to our text and we're going to see how this develops. All right, Vendell Jones, an unlikely champion for the Jerusalem temple. This is on page 20. That is a major headline there. And the 1988 discovery, the anointing oil. That's on page 22. That's what I just told you about. After more than a decade of fruitless excavations, April 1988 brought Jones' first major find. On his sixth dig season in this cave, he uncovered a small Herodian period juglet wrapped in palm leaves in cave 13. Wait, it's not the same cave. As the vessel warmed in the desert sun, a thick, dark substance began to seep from a crack in its sides. The discovery was made in consortium with Hebrew University, assisted by archaeologist Joseph Patrick. Now, he's a major archaeologist. Benny Arubas and the late Benny Agur. Jones identified the liquid as shemen apharsimon, balsam or persimmon oil associated in rabbinic tradition with the temple's anointing practices. It was distinct from shemen ha-mishkah, the complete sacred anointing oil prepared by Moses and used to consecrate the tabernacle, its vessels, and the priest's division. Rabbinic tradition says that the original oil was later hidden away in the Second Temple period. Shemen apharsimon, that's what we have up here at the top. What they suspected that this bottle that they found was associated instead with royal and priestly anointing. Jones believed this find was this later oil. Now remember, that was identified by Joseph Patrick as this is possibly what it is. Okay, so that this find was this later oil preserved for future temple use and promoted as the first recovery of an item connected to the Copper Scrolls list of hidden temple treasures. The story ran on the front page of the New York Times on February 15th, 1988. Hey, that means it was worldwide news and was covered by National Geographic in October of that year. CNN and Omni also covered the story, bringing Jones to international prominence and reigniting public interest in the Copper Scroll. The juglet was placed in the Israel Museum. Subsequent analysis by two Haifa University professors disputed Jones' identification, arguing that the oil most closely resembled a substance derivable from date stones. The find remains contested to this day. But it passed from Vendell Jones' hands and it went into the museum and it was a dead end street. All right. Now, the Noahide covenant, truth shall spring from the earth. This was the motto, truth shall spring from the earth. And to me, it's a very interesting motto, especially in Hebrew. And it says, for Jones, these relationships matter because they help define the limits of his role. He saw himself as the finder, not the final religious authority. Now, I especially find that interesting because that's exactly how I see myself. Okay. I'm not the religious authority. I hope to discover stuff and share it with the religious authorities and not the other way around. Okay. His motto, Emet min ha'artz titzmak. Truth shall spring forth from the earth. Now, you see this word titzmak, okay? And where you have Tzmach, okay? That means branch, samak, okay? Titzmak, that means to spring forth, okay? But these are the terms they're used. We pray in the Amidah for the coming Messiah. Et samak, David, Avdecha, and then it goes on. And 3 times in that one prayer, the word, some form of samak comes up. So I thought it was a very interesting. Truth shall spring forth. That's tit samak, from the earth, which is found out of Psalms 85, verse 12. Captured the way he understood the work, a fusion of the archaeological and the spiritual. What he believed he was digging for was not merely an artifact, but a confirmation. Big difference. Rising out of the earth after 2,000 years, that the temple service was real, the Ketoret was real, and the covenant between God and humanity remained intact and awaiting its fulfillment. I want to stop sharing. I have this belief. I believe that we have to build the temple according to the Tavnit, the blueprint that he gave. That blueprint is not just the temple building and the buildings around it and the courtyards and the altar and the furniture, such as the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark, the menorah, the Mizbeach Ketoret, the incense altar, and the Shulchan Lechem HaPanim, the table of the bread of the face. It's not just how high the gates are, how wide the gates are, the porticos around it, but it deals with every aspect. It deals with the vessels that they'll use to collect the blood. It deals with the actual way that the korbanot were slaughtered and how that their various parts were offered on the temple. That's all part of the tafnit. And in the height of this is the incense. The incense has a special formula. It has a special penalty if one violates it. It has that it must be done by a certain number of priests. There are steps to it. They cannot get this out of order. And so all of that. But we have a problem. The Tavnit we don't have. We have to rediscover the Tavnit for all these buildings and all these courtyards. We cannot go up there. We don't have where the Temple Mount has been stripped and we can see the ruins of the earlier temples. We can't do that. What we see is the Dome of the Rock in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We see a Muslim platform that is against Scripture, planted with all types of olive trees and so forth all over the place. But we have to build according to the Tavnit. So somewhere, somehow, God has to preserve that information. But my goodness, the incense formula, the amounts, the various ingredients, all of this, and how it's put together, the quantity that is made at a time, how much is put on the altar, all of that we have to reconstruct. Somewhere, God would have to preserve it. Somewhere. And so that brings us to what they found in the cave. And could this be where God has preserved the Ketoret, at least it isn't really Ketoret yet, not until you add the Korshina line, not until you add the salt and so forth. you have to activate it for it to actually become Ketoret. But this is the recipe, and that could be amazing. Okay, so now I like coffee. I love coffee. I've been drinking coffee for over 70 years. And every day, at 4 years old, I was drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day and have continued every day of my life since, except Yom Kippur and fast days. And so the only thing is that if you have coffee and you have the beans or you have the grinds, that after a little bit, it doesn't taste like coffee anymore. It loses that aroma. It loses its potency, and it becomes just something that you throw in the trash if you leave it too long. This is 2,000 years old. How could something 2,000 years still carry a tremendous scent? Okay, so we have, all right, part 2, the incense story from discovery to custody. Page 25, at the end of the season, volunteer Dale Griffin, this is the guy that worked for me, accidentally discovers a small opening to a cave. After approximately 3 weeks of excavation, the team reaches the cave floor and recovers a reddish-brown substance in a stone silo in bedrock channels. Page 27. This substance is sent to Dr. Terry Hutter, a palynologist, performing botanical tests of the material and identifies distinct plant species as matching the Ketoret. Page 28, May 27, 2025. Okay, so this is a long time. We jumped from May 1994 to May 27, 2025. Sarah Richardson, who is the wife. I told you that he had divorced and remarried. Sarah Richardson is murdered at her home in Male Lavona. Her son is later reported to have confessed involvement in her death. All right. All right. Notes on the eyewitness testimony. This is on page 29. Jim Long became a central figure, this eyewitness testimony, beginning in 1994 when he joined the project as cameraman and still photographer, and later became Vendel Jones documentarian, PR representative, and close collaborator with until Jones's death. Long is a former radio personality, documentary filmmaker, author, and advocate in the Noahide movement. He is known for his broadcasting career, archaeological expeditions in the Middle East with Vendel Jones, and founding Lightcatcher Productions, through which he produced 2 archaeological documentaries, including Riddle of the Exodus and Treasures of the Copper Scroll. He was hired as a producer on Search for the Ark of the Covenant, an episode of the Quest TV series. Jim also served as Vendel's media liaison, working with A&E, the History Channel, and other networks. He lives in Arkansas and is actively involved in Project Qumran. Page 31, the identification of that area went back to Jones's collaboration with his Israeli mentor, the archaeologist Pesach Bar Adon, who had spent years studying the terrain between Jericho and Saqqara. Column 6 of the scroll, which both men regarded as the single most precise entry, this is the Copper Scroll, in the entire document, describes a cave with 2 openings facing east. On the road from Jericho to Saqqara, near the Wadi Kippah. The Ma'arat Timonim, the twin cave, also known as the Cave of the Column, was the only structure in that entire stretch of desert that fit. The site stood only about 50 meters from Cave 11Q, where the temple scroll was found, and a short walk from Cave 3 Cube, where the copper scroll was discovered. For Jones, the proximity mattered. He often argued that the copper scroll itself listed hidden temple treasures, while the temple scroll described how temple worship could be restored once those objects were recovered. Page 32. Dale Griffin and a couple of other people stayed behind and found the opening to the cave they didn't know was there. From what I was told, Dale basically discovered it by accident. He slipped, went over a ledge, and when he fell into it, he could see it was a cave that went back into the mountain. So on page 33, we go into the 1992 expedition, the opening of the cave. We have a part that deals with the scale of the work. I didn't put that in here. The moment of discovery. This is going to be on page 35. Archaeological note. An intriguing echo appears in John C. Trevor's The Untold Story of Qumran. Trevor, who in 1948 became the first scholar to photograph the scrolls from Cave 1, including the Isaiah scroll, preserved a 1961 interview with Muhammad Adib of the Ta'amari Bedouin, one of the discoverers of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In that account, Muhammad recalled that he and his cousin broke open one of the sealed jars in Cave 1, and catch this, and found it full of red earth, which they ignored because it seemed to them to be ordinary dirt. It was thrown away. They kept the jar. They threw away the dirt, okay? But it wasn't dirt, more than likely. I can't say that for sure, but it appears that it was this organic red material that was found in this particular cave. So, Dr. Terry Hutter and the botanical evidence. This is on page 50. The laboratory and the fragrance. Okay, listen to this. In his formal report dated May 5th, 1994, he wrote, the aroma released from the spice compound during its processing was profuse and almost immediate. Wait a second. I just told you about the coffee. Coffee will lose its aroma if it ages too much. This is 2,000 years old. The aroma released from the spice compound during its processing was profuse and almost immediate. It initially saturated my hands as well as the clothes that I was wearing. Within a matter of minutes, my laboratory and the surrounding area, for an area of several meters, was affected by the scent released from the spices. Now, remember, this doesn't have the salt added to it, the lye added to it. It's not being burnt. This is just the scent of these spices, 2,000-year-old spices. On the first day of processing, the aroma was so intense that I could almost taste it. Upon my return home that evening, the scent had attached itself to both my wife and daughter. During the course of the week, the odor lessened slightly, but was still noticeable in and around my lab. Within a few weeks, the distinct aroma of the spices diminished to a freshness or cleanliness of the air in my lab and the surrounding area. Now, this was his report, his official report in 1994. All right, the identification. Page 52. Only after this conversation did Hutter learn in general terms that Jones and the excavation team believed that what the material might be. In other words, this man that they sent the material to, they didn't tell him what it was. They didn't tell him whether it was organic or it was dirt. And so he was to find out, is it organic or is dirt? And past that, he didn't know anything at that time what it was. Now, understand, he's not Jewish, okay? He doesn't know Hebrew. I don't know how much of a Bible scholar he was, but we have some amazing things that are happening here. As his preliminary analysis continued in the United States, he ordered known botanical specimens from around the world and compared their microscopic structures directly with those preserved in the Qumran sample. That's where I came up with some of the identification, he explained. These comparisons helped him determine whether particular fragments belonged to a specific species or genus. They also led him to conclude that whoever prepared the mixture had used more than flowers and other pollen-bearing portions of the plants. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't ordered this stuff and try to do direct comparisons of the morsorelles. His analysis therefore considered the morsorelle breakdown alongside the spore and pollen counts. Among his most detailed conclusions was the identification of 3 different parts of the cinnamon tree: inner bark, outer bark, and new shoot growth. Hutter associated each with a distinct component of the traditional formula. In his report, Hutter presented the following botanical identifications. Now, I only put a few of these in, ones that I found the most interesting, but if you download the book, it will give you a full listing of everything that's there. Saffron, which is Crocus sativus, Hebrew Carcum. The most easily identifiable because of the high pollen content of the crocus flower. Hutter noted that the variety in the sample differed slightly from modern cultivated saffron and had a red pistil with the reddish blue to lavender flowers. Cinnamon bark. I'm not going to try to do the name in cinnamon in Hebrew, identified from fragments of the inner bark of young branches 4 to 5 years old. This, in his report, Hutter presented the following botanical identifications. Saffron, the carcome, the most easily identifiable. Okay, all right, copied that twice. Page 53, frankincense, Lavona, found as pale yellow to whitish gum and resin fragments. Hutter identified the sample as showing characteristics of pure Arabian Boswellia sacra rather than the common Indian substitute found in modern markets. Now, as we go through, wait a second. I don't think I'm sharing. I'm not. Okay. I'm going to run back. And so here, this is where he talks about the fragrance, okay? I want to read this one. We won't read the rest of them. The aroma released from the spice compound during its processing was profuse and almost immediate. It initially saturated my hands as well as the clothes that I was wearing. Within a matter of minutes, my laboratory and the surrounding area for an area of several meters was affected by the scent released from the spices. On the first day of processing, the aroma was so intense that I could almost taste it. Upon my return home that evening, the scent had attached itself to both my wife and daughter. During the course of the week, the odor lessened slightly, but was still noticeable in and around my lab. Okay, so let me drop down. And I want to get down to some of this here. All right. Page 54. David Ben Abraham later expressed a similar distinction. You can't call this Ketoret as such because the Ketoret is the final mixture. What was found was a mixture of spices that appeared to be prepared for the final ingredients still to be added. That distinction did not weaken the claim, it made it more precise. The 1994 findings suggested that the cave may have preserved a deliberately prepared spice mixture awaiting final processing, rather than a random organic deposit or the completed Ketoret in the form of which it would have been offered on the altar. Hutter also emphasized the extraordinary preservation of the sample. Pollen, resin, flowers, and plant structures remain identifiable under the microscope after roughly 2,000 years. He attributed this preservation to the absence of oxygen and the weight of deep burial. The silo had been covered by approximately 100 tons of earth. Stop and think about that. In his view, the preservation was so exceptional that further study might make it possible to reconstruct the exact proportions and varieties used and eventually reproduce the complete incense formula. Now, there's going to be some criticisms of this stuff, okay? So far, everything we're reading is coming from the ones that investigated this substance, as well as the Vendel-Jones team, okay? There's going to be people that say, wait a minute. And there is a call for further testing. But wait a second. Right now, this book is came out this past week, okay, as a free download. And it's actually coming forth from one of the main researchers who was a very prominent a doctor, a scientist, as well as a very prominent rabbi. And his son, the doctor's dead, his son is the head of the project. Now, I was told there is a video that is coming out, like a movie, that is going to be presenting the same stuff, but coming from a different avenue, a different perspective, and so forth. But this is going to be breaking forth as major news with everyone that is concerned with the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, and will catch the imagination of many that are just curious about things being discovered from the ancient. Okay, so we are in 2026. This was 1992, 93, 94. And we have made huge strides towards the temple. We made huge strides in the abilities. If you look at medicine today as compared to medicine back then, the types of x-rays, the type of, and same thing in the field, and especially in the botanical field. It has blossomed, if I can use that. Sounds like a pun, but all of these things are coming. There's an appointed time for each and everything. And so now it's surfacing, and the controversy surrounding it is going to become a boiling point, and all of these things. Now, so I told you that Vendel-Jones was a Noahide, and he was heavily involved with Chabad, studying under them. And he was he believed in the halakha. And so he has a major problem. If this is Ketoret, or if this is the ingredients that were here for the Ketoret, then we have all these various plant mixtures and there's various quantities and so forth. And I failed to mention, it will come up. I'm going to have to do this in two parts. We don't have enough time. I have 6 more pages of notes right now. And so, but not only did they find this organic material inside this vat, okay, but they also found Sodom salt that was stored in that cave separate from the organic material in the vat. And they found Quercetin lye. Oh, and they found one more ingredient. And all of these, you mix those with this and you have incense. But if it was for that mixture, for the purpose of incense, it's already dedicated to the temple. And so to how it's going to be handled and what they can do with it. Not only do they have to meet the academic and the science requirements, but they have to follow halakha. So he is going to consult leading rabbinical figures, and I want to show you some of their comments and things. And so let's go back and we're going to share. We're going to look at a little bit of this, and then we're going to go to questions. Okay, so the meeting with Rabbi Ovadia Yosef and the burning question, page 56. Jones came with 3 jars, one containing the organic spice material. He's come to meet this rabbi. He was not at that time, but the year before, I think it was just the year before, he was the chief Sephardic rabbi. Okay, so Jones came with 3 jars, one containing the organic spice material, the others containing the separate ingredients, which I just mentioned, he believed were meant to complete the mixture. He showed Rabbi Yosef maps of the archaeological site and photographs of the work, then explained in broken Hebrew and through an interpreter, both this theory and his dilemma. We have made every test there is. Jones explained, showing the rabbi the 3 containers. These are spices and these are the other ingredients. The Corsena lime, the Sodom salt were presented separately, consistent with the Talmudic instruction to keep the inorganic finishing ingredients apart from the main compound until the moment of use. So you're going to have to mix it all at the last moment. These 2 together are the Ketoret. This is holy. I will not do anything with this, but the final test is to combine these and put them on fire. The interpreter put the question plainly. The team had not conducted the test because they were afraid it was forbidden. Could professors or perhaps a tribunal perform the examination? Rabbi Yosef's answer turned on a precise halakhic distinction. It was not clear. He explained that the material had ever been sanctified for temple use in its present state. Sanctification requires a verbal act. In other words, you have to say, this is kadosh, this is holy. If the components had not been formally consecrated and had not yet been combined into the final compound, the legal status was different. Jones then pointed to a fact that already mattered scientifically. The material had been found in separate categories, with the spices apart from the other ingredients. In this context, that separation became halakhically important as well. Rabbi Yosef permitted the test, but only as an examination without a blessing. You can make an examination without the blessing just for the test. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. Now, I need to tell you something. I left out at this time, we're going to do this next week. There is actually, before this, went to the botanist. That went to a chemist. Okay, this is the chemist that is a doctor, is a scientist, and he's also a rabbi. Okay, and he's going to come forth with some profound statements. Okay, and so now for the chronology, the importance of the ruling is simple. This is page 57. The team did not proceed to the burning test merely on excitement, private conviction, or scientific curiosity. They sought rabbinic permission first. My hat's off to them. I would do the same thing. And the permission they received depended on the same distinction that had emerged from the scientific evidence. The material appeared to be connected to the Ketoret, but not necessarily yet the completed, sanctified Ketoret itself. So they're going to burn it. Now, I'm going to read this little part, and then we're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to go to questions. And we'll go as my intention was to get as far as I could tonight, and then we'll follow up with it. If you read the book during the next week, it's going to blow you away. Okay. So Jones described the result as striking. The results were astonishing. Despite the age of the materials used, the aroma was quite unique. And although the spice had undoubtedly lost some of its potency over the last 2 millennia, it was mesmerizing. The residue of its fragrance lingered in the vicinity for several days. We're coming to something. I just literally, my toes just started fluttering when I read this. The residue of its fragrance lingered in the vicinity for several days following the experiment. Several of our volunteers even reported that their hair and clothing retained the aroma. No description could better fit the fragrance than the biblical passage that refers to the sweet-smelling savor of the incense. Bendel Jones, 1995, Qumran Excavations Report. Jones added a further observation. This is the paragraph that he considered significant. After the burning, an area that had been plagued with flies, ants, moths, and other insects showed no further sign of these pests. He noted that the Talmud records that there were no flies in the area of the temple, a detail he understood as connected to the Ketoret's burning. I'm going to show you that text. I put this in, okay? So Tim wonders, this is from Pirkei Avot. I didn't put the address. I believe, I'll get the address for you. Tim wonders were wrought for our ancestors in the temple. Number one, no woman miscarried from the odor of the sacred flesh. Number two, the sacred flesh never became I can't say this word, putrid. No fly, number three, was ever seen in the slaughterhouse. And it goes forward, and there are other things. All right. I'll see if I can get that before we close tonight, the address. It's in Pirkei Avot, okay? And it lists the numbers of 10 different things that were miracles. I want to stop sharing. And here, this area right here, and this area right here. Looks little in this model, but this area is almost the size of a football field. Okay, that's a slaughterhouse. This is a slaughterhouse, right here. This is the community slaughterhouse. Now, when you slaughter an animal, we're talking about lots of blood. Not only blood, you have all kinds of waste material, the bowels loose. And so you're going to have, number one, a lot of sanitation, a lot of clean. But a slaughterhouse is a place that today they can do it where everything is in a building and it's air conditioned and they got it sealed off. But not too long ago, they didn't have air conditioning. And so a slaughterhouse is going to be a place that you're going to have ants, you're going to have flies, you're going to have all kinds of things. And that was one of the things we asked the question, could it possibly be that the incense was so powerful that it was a total deterrent to every insect you could imagine? Now, you'd have to deal with the blood, to deal with the fecal matter, you're going to have a washing system, and so that you can keep the floor clean constantly. Okay, everybody's walking around barefoot. And how can this be? How do we have that in all these people coming? I remember years ago, We were in California. We took a family trip. So we had all the kids. Okay. Yael was a baby. So we had all 8 kids. And we were in a big van and everything. And if you take a 300 or 400 mile trip with kids, of that many kids, there's screaming, arguing, there's everything going on. But all of a sudden, the kids started laughing because they felt somebody had expelled gas. What it was, we were miles, maybe 5, 6 miles before we came to a gigantic slaughterhouse. But you could smell it coming to it. Now, the temple was definitely not as big a slaughterhouse as what was out in California. I mean, they must have had 20,000 animals there. But in the temple, we're going to have a tremendous amount of animals in a small area. We do not have one text anywhere that talks about the odor. Isn't that strange? And inside of that, we don't have where the sound of all these animals, you would expect that there would be sound, but something appears to calm them down. Could it be the incense? I mean, there's going to be coming up in the papers, there's going to be more accounts where the different ones will come in and say that just the incense cleared the area of all insects. My goodness, that's without burning. So you have to remember, they're doing one burning sample, and for days, there's no insects. For days. In the temple, incense was burned every morning and was burned every afternoon. Twice. And my goodness. Now, I'm going to stop, and we're going to go to questions. So if you have question number one, first off, I want your questions. And some of it we might be answering next week as we go into this. If you like what you have heard, please hit the like button and go over and do that if you're on Facebook, at YouTube, and so forth. And if you're on YouTube, run over and do it on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. We want to get way over 700. And so the more you share, then the more that we get towards those goals, and we'll be able to bring these things out more and more. And so let me get in here and see what we can find. All right. All right, Betty Brush, first one on. Very good. And Betty, you've been so good all these years. You've been with us for forever and a half. And Tim Smiley, look forward to seeing you, and I love to see your name up here every week and see that shalom from you. Daryl Wade, and Daryl, I was thinking about you the other day, and there in Wichita, Kansas. Okay, so Andrew Calantis, shalom, Rabbi. Actually, I'm not a rabbi. You can call me a teacher if you like, but Joe's just fine. Jeff Fosberg, one of my team, okay? And Jeff, I know you're going to read the book. Richard Setzinger from Greenwood, Arkansas. And Richard, I know all of y'all are going to read this book. All right. Let's go down. Jackie Gaylor. Okay, Jackie from Odessa, Texas. And Jackie, I hope that that PowerPoint that I sent you, it helped you. And I hope you had a good talk. I'm sure you did. All right, Janet Meadows from Georgia. And Janet, you're one of my favorite people in the world. Okay. All right, so the link is right. Okay. Jim McBee, watching from Oregon. Very good. Victor. And Victor will be in the interview with me tomorrow as we interview Eliyahu. Actually, we're not going to so much interview him as he's going to tell the story. Okay. And it'll be better than me telling it. Okay. A whole lot better. But here's the spice. I mean, the link. And so I see that it has an A there. So you might take that A out. So it should be just the projectqumran.org. That might be the problem some people were having. Okay. And Gabrielle. And Gabrielle has helped so much. And Victor. Yeah, here it is. Victor's put it up. Okay, so that should get you there. Okay. And, okay, Angel Miranda Cruz Alta. Okay, from Mexico. Very good. Very good. Your servant of Mexico. All right. That's the Messiahs. All right. Shalom, family. Okay. Yakahana. Yedakiana. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I hope you get the link open. Somebody will be able to help you. Teresa Anderson, shalom, everyone. She heard of the Project Qumran podcast today, and she had already downloaded. Very good. All right. Okay, there's the link again. All right, Jim McVie, do I still talk to Susan Marcus? Susan is retired. Last time I saw her, I ran into her in Ben Gurion Airport. She was there dropping off a tour, but she was only at that time, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, it was probably longer than that. It's probably 8 or 9 years ago. And she was only occasionally doing tours back then. She's in her 80s now. And so I haven't heard from her. I'll try to check on her. Susan was great. All right. And Gabrielle saying to everyone, shalom. Chodesh Tov, that's right. We started Rosh Chodesh Av tonight. Okay. And so tonight, we did for the next 9 days, our observance of the mourning customs. It increases. From this point, we don't drink wine socially. We don't eat meat. You can have wine. You can have meat on Shabbat, and there are a number of other things that we don't do. Okay, so and it is a time that I think that everyone should be watching what's happening in the Middle East as the war over there is once again escalating. I personally am in support of the war. I think Iran has to be dealt with. And I do not think that negotiating the peace deals are going to do anything but bring more death and destruction. And this has to be dealt with. And let me say that Senator Lindsey Graham that died, we should all mourn his passing. To me, he was a great senator, and he was a man that stood for the biblical values, and he definitely was a friend and ally of Israel. Okay, all right. Okay, again, let me read this. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Your interaction helps us reach more people and keeps this community growing. We're only 4 subscribers away from reaching 700. We got 3 more, I know. So I hope that we're going to go way up above it tonight. Okay? Over 700. All right. All right. The website doesn't work. I'm not sure which website we're talking about. Here's the one that, for the book is projectqumran.org. Okay, Darren Anthony, Shalom from New York City. Vodas HaKorbanos has pretty good descriptions of the incense service. Yes, I read it today. On a different note, when is the next tour to Israel? Right now, it's hard to get tours to Israel. And especially with everything that is occurring over the last few days and will accelerate. And whenever the airlines start flying, where you can get over flying on an American airline, or you have a choice if you want to go other airlines, then we'll start planning some trips. Now, I am thinking that at some point we will go over to Israel to do some presentations to some of the rabbis and some of the research we're doing. So I hope that touring will come back and we could all go and have a tremendous time. Okay. Teresa Anderson says, replying to Darren Anthony, thanks for reminding us. I have that book. There is a new one out, by the way. It's just on the carbon, on the animal offerings. It's from Qumran Publishers. And I was reading in it earlier, but apparently that was downstairs. I don't see it up here. I'll try to show you that book next week. Okay, Greg Moon. Shalom, did I understand correctly that there is an assistant with the Kohen who burns the incense at the golden altar? He's not with him when he burns it. He is there. He's going to go in first, and he is going to spread the ashes. I mean, not the ashes, the coals, and then he tamps them down to where that they're evenly spread over the surface of the altar's top. He is charged with the responsibility of giving instructions to the Kohen that was selected by Lot to burn the incense. His last statement will be to burn the incense, but he departs at that time. He prostrates and he departs. At the time of the burning of the incense, the only one that is in the Hekal, in the temple building, is the Kohen who is actually burning the incense. Okay? How does this square with the story of Zechariah, father of Yochanan, Hamatville, John the Baptist? This would mean he too would have seen the angel. Correct. No, he would not be. He would have already left. Okay. All right. So, all right. Janish Shrimernino. Question, is there any meaning in the 11 spices being used plus 2 additional ingredients? My thoughts went to the 12 tribes plus Joseph's 2 sons. Perhaps I'm seeing a connection that doesn't exist. Thank you, Joe. I think that there is tremendous significance in that we have 13 ingredients. Because, for instance, there are 13 attributes of Hashem. There are 13 articles of faith. We have there are 13 priests that serve in the morning Tamid and 13 that serve in the afternoon Tamid. There are 13 treasure chests in the temple. There are 13 gates to the temple. 13 is a holy number, unlike in the non-Jewish world where 13 is a bad and evil number. But the 13 ingredients here, again, this is another aspect to that. Now, the priestly blessing, the Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face shine upon you, and the Lord give you shalom. Okay. In Hebrew, it has 13 words. And so you're going to find lots of these, but to me, they're all interchanged. Now, also, I believe that when we talk about the incense, and I talked with Eliyahu Berkowitz this morning, and we talked about this a little bit. I believe that when you think of incense, you think of the aroma, you think of the smell, you think of the smoke, you think of the prayers that are being carried up in that incense. But we have many, many other things that are going to have different aromatic type things that deal with the senses. On the Lechem Hapanim, the Shulchan Lechem Hapanim, that's the table of the bread of the face. You have the 12 loaves of bread, but you have 2 little trays of frankincense. You have that on the korbanot, the mincha that will accompany it, the bread offering. It will have, I would show you an illustration, but it's actually down in my bedroom right now. Debbie's prepared a thing on some bread offerings. And but you have a special vessel that the dough is going to be mixed in. They pour oil in, but they'll pour frankincense in. And that frankincense will be removed before the bread is baked. But it has to come in, and it's going to sit there for for a little bit, and then it's removed. My question is why? I mean, if you have an ingredient that's put in and it's not going to be baked as part of the overall thing, why did you put it in the first place? I think there's a message that's there. Now, one of the most interesting, and I brought this up to Eliyahu this morning, is that when King Solomon, when he, I'll read it to you. This always fascinated me. Let me see. Give me a second. Never mind. I found something. Okay. I'm going to go to 1 Kings, where Solomon's building the temple and building his palace. And so we're going to the 10th chapter. And it says, now when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. So she comes to Jerusalem, and very much gold and precious stones she brings. And so she saw the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he built, the food on his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters and their apparel, his cupbearers, and his entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord. There was no more spirit in her. So I want to drop down. That was all the way through the verse 4. And it says that she gave gifts to Solomon. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, spices in great abundance, and precious stones. There never again came such abundance of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Also, the ships of Haram brought gold from Ophir, brought great quantities of almug wood and precious stones from Ophir. And the king made steps of the almug wood for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, also harps and string instruments for singers. There never again came such almug wood, nor has there the like been seen to this day. Okay, now I want to go back up here. That walkway that she was impressed with. It says, and the entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord. Now I want to go to the book of Chronicles. In Chronicles, in chapter 9, First Chronicles chapter 9, and it's almost word for word the same. It talks about the gold that she brought, the food on his table, the seating of his servants, and the entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord. And it says in verse 11, and the king, it talks about above it the algum wood, and the other was almig, and this is algum, but they're the same wood, just different names, or possibly a scribals era in copying. Okay, the king made walkways of the algum wood for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, also harps, stringed instruments for singers, and there were none such as these seen before in the land of Yehuda. And so it goes forward. And I read that and I went, wow, that must have been some walkway. Now, it said that they made harps from this almig wood. So a very famous harp maker, Shoshana and Mecca Horoi of Horoi Harps. And they made harps for the temple. And I knew both Shoshana and Mecca. And I used to call her every once in a while. And so I called her and I said, what can you tell me about these harps with almond wood? And what she told me was this is a very, very, it is a unique type of wood. This particular family of woods is fairly widespread, but the wood that they're talking about here, it comes from an island off of India. And it's very hard to get to because it's a military installation. You have to have a special permit to get, and that's where this wood grows. And she said of all the woods that she's ever seen, and she works in woods, this particular wood is the most aromatic of all woods. So that made me think, my goodness, that means when you go to the temple, you're barefooted. And so you're walking on this walkway made of this aromatic wood. And the idea that it's not just like cedar, it is an especially aromatic wood. And aromatherapy, with oils, Young Living, and all the different oils that they have, that a lot of it they apply directly to the foot because it is a highway, it is a river to the rest of the body. And I went to Rabbi Richmond and talked to him about it. And he began talking to me about all the various things we have in Scripture that deal with senses. And we think of the Havdalah. We think of the book, Shir HaShirim. That is the book that has the most spices and fragrances and perfumes and everything, any book of the Bible. And it ends with the phrase about the Temple Mount. It calls it Har Basamim, the mountain of the spices. And so I see an interconnection between all of these, that they are somehow weaving a message that goes beyond our wildest imaginations, things that you and I would read and we'd say, well, they're just exaggerating. But I don't think so much. We're talking about God and God's holy temple. And so we've just become dull to it because of 2,000 years. Rather than the incense losing its aroma, it's us. We've lost ours. Okay, so. All right, so let me see. I've got some people here that have, all right. Brittany Wilkinson. All right, very good. And the Kahana, okay, very good that you're here and that the link worked for you. Denise Perez, I'm glad you got here. Better late than never. Dan Solis from Plano, Texas. Dan is a good friend for years back. All right. Yeah, here, keep hitting the like button. Message from Gabrielle, and I'd say, Yosef Eitan. Joe, I understand how a holy item can be taken by force and removed away from the sanctified area. How can the Ketoret be relocated to Qumran by the Jews? Okay, I actually have some material on that I'm going to be presenting next week. And next week, we're also going to be going into some of the questions that need to be asked and some of the responses that we need to have more validation, more scientific validation. Now, Vindell Jones broke the rules in numbers of ways. He didn't turn this incense over to the Antiquities Authority. He kept it because he was afraid they were going to put it in a warehouse and never go anywhere. He also was afraid this is a holy item. I've got a responsibility. I better be careful how I handle it, and much less he feared of how they would handle it. And so there are a number of things that were at stake here. And I apologize that this to talk about in the amount of time we have. I just hope that you get so curious you have to go look for yourself. All right. I'm curious if instead it was a major cache of the base of the product requiring a step or two to complete the holy status. I totally agree with that. But I believe that there is a bigger story behind it, and I'm going to present that next week. I've got some quotes from Josephus that I think I've got some quotes from the Mishnah and the Talmud. I've got my Talmud open to it right here to be able to go into it on my theory as to how did that end up at Qumran and why was it put there and how they do it. And so, very good. All right, Claude Perkins. My goodness, Claude. It's been forever and ever and twice that distance in 2,000 years since I've seen you or heard from you. Glad to see you. All right. Christopher Redhead. Ah, what a name. All right. That's bigger than I thought. Okay, that's good. I hate that stretch of highway. I'm not sure what that is. Okay. Pirkei Avot 5:5. Thank you. That is exactly where that quote is, the 10 items that were miracles in the temple. Okay. And I believe, I certainly believe the one on the flies and the insects, and I believe that the incense was the mechanism to get rid of those. And Debbie is feeling better this evening. Okay. Very much so. All right. Real estate inside out. Okay. Hodesh Tov. Okay. Hodesh Tov. Okay. New moon. Okay. And blessings. All right. Very good. Okay. 27-1K. All right. A Hawa key. All right. I'm not sure what that is, but very good. Okay. From Christopher Redhead, Iran can't be trusted with more funds. The last time that happened, they just built more underground bases and rockets. Oh, Agar Ramos. Agar is building a website for his video, the documentary on the temple. Some of the individuals that we'll meet in next week's thing are actually going to be interviewed. They're interviewed by Edgar. He's got the trailer is finished. I'm not sure if he's put it out yet. I saw his work today on his new website for the video. And y'all, listen, all of this, you might want to contribute to it. It is a major thing of a major step towards the building of the temple and building relationships between our group and the various frontline people. Okay? All right. Be watching for Edgar's video. Iran gets billions. This is Christopher Redhead again. Builds more underground bases and rockets, so that's a pass. I agree. Humble servant of Hashem. Shalom from New Hampshire. Terry Miller, like, share, follow. Yes, please tell friends to follow. Ask your friends to share the videos. Okay, we have passed 700. Our next goal is 1,000. Let's do it. Very good. Okay. Okay. Janice Schrebner Nino, thank you for clarifying me. So interesting and important. Symbolism is everywhere in the scripture. Yeah, by the way, there were 13 tables in the inner courtyard of the temple. And there's, if you go to the Mishnah, Shekalim or Shekalim, chapter 6, they're going to be all the 13, so kind of listed in a row, a number of them. Okay. All right. Jim McBee, with all the aromatherapy, what an experience to go up to worship the Lord our God. Good information to make our minds work. Okay, I believe that's all the questions for tonight. Please download the book, send that link to other people, ask them to do, and if you've enjoyed tonight, share it with someone and get them to share it with others too. Okay, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for overlooking all the little mistakes I make and clicking this button or that button. But hopefully one day, before I get too old, I'll get better. All right? Shalom, everyone. God bless you. And Chodesh Tov.
nombre es Gabriel Gallegos. Saludos a todos aquellos seguidores de Hacktivac Ministries, en especial a nuestra comunidad latina. El día de hoy queremos compartir con ustedes uno de los artículos más impresionantes que podemos tener en nuestra tienda virtual. Te invitamos a que te quedes y a conocer más del modelo tridimensional del templo. Les presento el nuevo modelo del templo. Una de las cosas adicionales que se han agregado en esta impresión es esta base donde está de una manera inclinada de 45 grados. ¿Para qué? Para que pueda enseñarse mejor a nuestra audiencia. O si usted, al igual que a mí, le gusta ponerlo de la manera tradicional y ponerlo en una superficie plana, pues también puedo hacerlo. De esta manera usted lo puede poner en su oficina o en su lugar de estudio o en su lugar de reunión. ¿Para qué? Para que la gente pueda admirar la gran maravilla de lo que se ha podido llegar a hacer. Ahora les voy a invitar a que me sigan acompañando para mirar las siguientes adiciones que se le han agregado a este nuevo modelo. Uno de los nuevos aspectos de este nuevo modelo tridimensional son los colores que se han añadido, como el color oro, el color blanco, un café y un café un poquito más claro. Podemos mirar el color blanco en los 15 escalones que están en el atrio de las mujeres, como también en las 4 lámparas. Podemos mirar el color blanco en el misbeach, en el altar, como también en los 2 escalones que están entre el ulam y el altar. Podemos encontrar este color blanco también en estos pequeños mikvaot o también baños de inmersión que se han añadido. También podemos apreciar en el misbeach, el altar, se agregaron a color las 3 fogatas y en el centro podemos encontrar de color café más claro las cenizas del altar. Otro de los buenos beneficios de este modelo es de que los edificios adicionales, el techo puede ser removido. En el edificio sureste podemos mirar cómo el área donde el Sanedrín se reunía para hacer sus juicios, y también se ha agregado un color azul en donde está el lavacro para así poder distinguir las diferentes áreas. Les agradecemos mucho a cada uno de ustedes, especialmente a la comunidad latina, por estarnos acompañando. Pueden ir a Jerusalem Temple Studies y buscar la opción tienda o store en inglés y luego buscar modelos del templo y ahí podrán obtener el suyo. Bendiciones y gracias por su apoyo. Shalom. Mi nombre es Gabriel Gallegos. Saludos a todos aquellos seguidores de Hacktivac Ministries, en especial a nuestra comunidad latina. El día de hoy queremos compartir con ustedes uno de los artículos más impresionantes que podemos tener en nuestra tienda virtual. Te invitamos a que te quedes y a conocer más del modelo tridimensional del templo. Les presento el nuevo modelo del templo. Una de las cosas adicionales que se han agregado en esta impresión es esta base donde está de una manera inclinada de 45 grados. ¿Para qué? Para que pueda enseñarse mejor a nuestra audiencia. O si usted, al igual que a mí, le gusta ponerlo de la manera tradicional y ponerlo en una superficie plana, pues también puedo hacerlo. De esta manera usted lo puede poner en su oficina o en su lugar de estudio o en su lugar de reunión. ¿Para qué? Para que la gente pueda admirar la gran maravilla de lo que se ha podido llegar a hacer. Ahora les voy a invitar a que me sigan acompañando para mirar las siguientes adiciones que se le han agregado a este nuevo modelo. Uno de los nuevos aspectos de este nuevo modelo tridimensional son los colores que se han añadido, como el color oro, el color blanco, un café y un café un poquito más claro. Podemos mirar el color blanco en los 15 escalones que están en el atrio de las mujeres, como también en las 4 lámparas. Podemos mirar el color blanco en el misbeach, en el altar, como también en los 2 escalones que están entre el ulam y el altar. Podemos encontrar este color blanco también en estos pequeños mikvaot o también baños de inmersión que se han añadido. También podemos apreciar en el misbeach, el altar, se agregaron a color las 3 fogatas y en el centro podemos encontrar de color café más claro las cenizas del altar. Otro de los buenos beneficios de este modelo es de que los edificios adicionales, el techo puede ser removido. En el edificio sureste podemos mirar cómo el área donde el Sanedrín se reunía para hacer sus juicios, y también se ha agregado un color azul en donde está el lavacro, para así poder distinguir las diferentes áreas. Les agradecemos mucho a cada uno de ustedes, especialmente a la comunidad latina, por estarnos acompañando. Pueden ir a Jerusalem Temple Studies y buscar la opción tienda o store en inglés y luego buscar modelos del templo y ahí podrán obtener el suyo. Bendiciones y gracias por su apoyo. Shalom. nombre es Gabriel Gallegos. Saludos a todos aquellos seguidores de Hacktivac Ministries, en especial a nuestra comunidad latina. El día de hoy queremos compartir con ustedes uno de los artículos más impresionantes que podemos tener en nuestra tienda virtual. Te invitamos a que te quedes y a conocer más del modelo tridimensional del templo. Les presento el nuevo modelo del templo. Una de las cosas adicionales que se han agregado en esta impresión es esta base donde está de una manera inclinada a 45 grados. ¿Para qué? Para que pueda enseñarse mejor a nuestra audiencia. O si usted, al igual que a mí, le gusta ponerlo de la manera tradicional y ponerlo en una superficie plana, pues también puedo hacerlo. De esta manera usted lo puede poner en su oficina o en su lugar de estudio o en su lugar de reunión. ¿Para qué? Para que la gente pueda admirar la gran maravilla de lo que se ha podido llegar a hacer. Ahora les voy a invitar a que me sigan acompañando para mirar las siguientes adiciones que se le han agregado a este nuevo modelo. Uno de los nuevos aspectos de este nuevo modelo tridimensional son los colores que se han añadido, como el color oro, el color blanco, un café y un café un poquito más claro. Podemos mirar el color blanco en los 15 escalones que están en el atrio de las mujeres, como también en las 4 lámparas. Podemos mirar el color blanco en el misbeaj, en el altar, como también en los 2 escalones que están entre el ulam y el altar. Podemos encontrar este color blanco también en estos pequeños mikvaot o también baños de inmersión que se han añadido. También podemos apreciar en el misbeaj, el altar, se agregaron a color las 3 fogatas y en el centro podemos encontrar de color café más claro las cenizas del altar. Otro de los buenos beneficios de este modelo es de que los edificios adicionales, el techo puede ser removido. En el edificio sureste podemos mirar cómo el área donde el Sanedrín se reunía para hacer sus juicios, y también se ha agregado un color azul en donde está el lavacro para así poder distinguir las diferentes áreas. Les agradecemos mucho a cada uno de ustedes, especialmente a la comunidad latina, por estarnos acompañando. Pueden ir a Jerusalem Temple Studies y buscar la opción tienda o store en inglés y luego buscar modelos del templo y ahí podrán obtener el suyo. Bendiciones y gracias por su apoyo. Shalom. Shalom, mi nombre es Gabriel Gallegos. Saludos a todos aquellos seguidores de Hacktivac Ministries, en especial a nuestra comunidad latina. El día de hoy queremos compartir con ustedes uno de los artículos más impresionantes que podemos tener en nuestra tienda virtual. Te invitamos a que te quedes y a conocer más del modelo tridimensional del templo. Les presento el nuevo modelo del templo. Una de las cosas adicionales que se han agregado en esta impresión es esta base donde está de una manera inclinada de 45 grados. ¿Para qué? Para que pueda enseñarse mejor a nuestra audiencia. O si usted, al igual que a mí, le gusta ponerlo de la manera tradicional y ponerlo en una superficie plana, pues también puedo hacerlo. De esta manera usted lo puede poner en su oficina o en su lugar de estudio o en su lugar de reunión. ¿Para qué? Para que la gente pueda admirar la gran maravilla de lo que se ha podido llegar a hacer. Ahora les voy a invitar a que me sigan acompañando para mirar las siguientes adiciones que se le han agregado a este nuevo modelo. Uno de los nuevos aspectos de este nuevo modelo tridimensional son los colores que se han añadido, como el color oro, el color blanco, un café y un café un poquito más claro. Podemos mirar el color blanco en los 15 escalones que están en el atrio de las mujeres, como también en las 4 lámparas. Podemos mirar el color blanco en el misbeaj, en el altar, como también en los 2 escalones que están entre el ulam